Welcome to Table for One. I'm the narrator, and today I'm going to be talking about Spirit Island. I'm going to be talking about the third of 5 spirits in my Radical Adaptations pack that I've made. Why I've used the Jagged Earth box, I couldn't tell you, because of the 5, this is the only one that can be played with just the base game without all the Jagged Earth components. So that was a decision I made. But this third spirit that I'm talking about today is Ghosts of 1,000 Generations. Let's get rolling. All right, so I'm ready to introduce you to Ghosts of 1,000 Generations. This is the third spirit that I have made in my Radical Adaptations pack, and I'm excited to share it with you here today. This spirit was mostly an exercise in I wanted to play with the whole idea of card reclaiming. And was there a way to make a spirit who never reclaimed? I know that there's a particular build for Starlight Seeks Its Form, where you never reclaim, but this is a little bit different than that. So that was the goal going into this. I also wanted to make a fear spirit, and I did, I think, but this fear spirit operates a little bit differently than some of the other fear spirits that are out there. While it does generate fear and can generate a large amount of fear, which is pretty typical for a fear type spirit, this spirit more benefits from the generation of fear. It's more motivated to generate fear for some of the other benefits that it gets. So I'll be highlighting that as well. So again, I'll pull up all this stuff on the screen. I'm going to pull this a little closer to me so I can see it. But if we start at the bottom of the lore card, you'll see that the complexity level is high. And in the summary of powers, fear is obviously the biggest, followed by offense. There's some utility, not so much control or defense, though it's not. None of those are at 0, but it's primarily a fear spirit with some offense. And I kind of bounced back and forth on the complexity on this one. But I think high is appropriate because it really does change a lot of aspects of how you play the game and maybe what you expect from a typical spirit build. But at the same time, it doesn't really have a big impact on how other people play. So if you're playing a multiplayer game, the other people around the table don't really need to understand the complexities of your spirit. So it's not very demanding of other people. And I think once you get going, it makes sense. So let's take a look at the actual lore piece at the top. And I guess before I do that, I should just describe what this spirit is. It's, Ghosts of 1,000 Generations. The idea was that this spirit is an amalgamation of many, many human spirits. So those of the Dahan and their forebearers. So the people who have lived on the island for generations and generations. When those people, well, I guess let's just read the lore piece and see if that explains some of it. But I did think it was a interesting take on the idea of what a spirit is itself. Among the Dahan, elders are valued for their experience and as conduits of ancestral knowledge passed down from time immemorial. And once these elders cross from this life to the next, they become a part of the ever-growing congregation of human spirits who continue to watch over, learn from, and, when it's appropriate, guide those who still walk among the living. But just as a nurturing mother bear will slay any hunter or trapper who threatens her cub, the ghosts of 1,000 generations can be galvanized into a frenzied mania of rage and wrath should their descendants, no matter how far removed, be threatened by antagonists who value not their own elders, the spirits, nor even the land itself. So, set up for the spirit, you put 2 presents on your starting board in the land with in the highest numbered land with blight. And I worded it that way just to account for, any special scenarios or anything where there might be more than one land with blight. And then you also add 1 fear marker to the fear pool, which is going to slow down, the earning of fear cards, and terror levels as you go. So we'll take a look at the play style afterwards, and we'll see how it matches what I describe here. But let's flip over to the play side. So we've got here the play side of the spirit, and I just want to say when I embarked on this adventure of making some spirits for this game, I had it in my head for no particular reason that I wanted to make 5. It was always going to be a pack of 5. I'm not sure why. But the more I worked on this and the deeper I delved into it, just the more I learned about these spirit boards and the intricacies of how they're put together, not just mechanically in terms of gameplay, but in terms of graphically. So I built, with some help of some things that I found online, I built my own templates to put all this together. And it was a real undertaking, but I'm pretty pleased with how it looks. So anyway, on to this spirit. There are 3 special rules. So let's start with those. The first is draw strength from dread. Immediately gain 1 energy every time a fear marker is earned. So already that's pretty unique. So this is the motivation I was talking about for earning fear, because that's your primary mode of gaining energy. We'll get to the presence tracks in a little bit, but you can see you start with 0. And as you go through the game, there's a lot of fear to be earned, and if each fear card has an additional fear token because the spirit has +1 fear token in the setup, I mean that's a lot of energy. So generally, this is a spirit that has lots and lots of energy, like more than you know what to do with, pretty quickly and for most of the game, once you reach that point. But it is energy is not the limiting factor for how you play it. So let's keep going on these special rules. The second is Eternal Essence. And the idea behind this is that you can't, the invaders cannot kill a ghost. They can try, and they can, they might destroy presence, but the destroyed presence is never destroyed permanently. You can't destroy a ghost. So this reads: when you add presence, you must use destroyed presence if you have any. You may only add presence from your tracks if you have no destroyed presence. So this is part blessing, part curse. It makes it really difficult to lose by having no presence on the board, because all you have to do is go to your next growth phase and you can put it back on the board. So you're pretty much permanently going to have presence on the board. It'd be pretty tough to lose by having no presence on the island. But at the same time, if you get in this cycle where you're constantly having presence destroyed, it's great that you can put it back, but you must put it back before you can take any presence off your tracks. So it can really be damaging to clearing off your presence tracks and scaling up your spirit. The third special rule is fleeting apparitions, and this represents the ethereal nature of the ghosts, which is a little bit in opposition to Eternal Essence, but that's okay. So this one reads: during time passes. So again, that's the phase when you're healing injured Dahan and invaders, and sort of doing all the bookkeeping of clearing tokens and such. During the time passes phase, you must forget exactly 1 power card from either your hand or your played cards. If you have no cards, destroy 1 presence. then immediately reclaim all remaining power cards. So this is the fundamental shift in the spirit, and I kind of built everything around this. So every round, you play whatever cards you're going to play, and then you get to reclaim all automatically during time passes, but you must forget one of them. So it's going to be very high card cycling, and I just think that's an interesting way to play. It gives you different choices, and I think hard choices, but interesting ones every turn. And so it's just going to be a very different play than anything else that's out there, I think. So those are the 3 special rules. So let's go and take a look at growth. So growth is, when I originally built the spirit, it was just 3 standard growth options, pretty typical. But after some play testing, I came up with this arrangement. And so this is more like, I think Lure of the Deep Wilderness has growth options like this. So you pick one of the first 2 options. We'll call that, I guess, growth 1 has 2 options. You pick one. And then growth 2, you also pick one of those 4 options. So if we look at the first piece, the growth 1 piece, pick one of, you can either gain a power card, but you must pay 2 energy to do it, or you can add presence to land with invaders or blight at range 2. So typically you're probably going to be putting presence down, but you can get another power card by paying 2 energy if you have it, and often you will have it. And then you pick one of the other 4, which consist of gain a power card with no cost. You can add a presence at range 2 to a land with Dahan, but you must pay 2 energy to do that. Your third option is gain 2 energy. And the fourth option is you may choose a card to play twice, but you must pay for it twice now. So I'll come back to that one in a second, but overall, the theme here is between the two sets of options, there are 2 add presence options, but if you select them both, you'll need to pay 2 energy and not gain a power card, which is important because you will be forgetting a card every turn. When you do add presence, it's either going to a land with invaders or Dahan or blight, which implies that invaders have been there. So the thematic reason for that is that, ghosts don't just hang out by themselves. They're going to be around people or where people have been. And so you might also notice you can gain a power card for free on the right-hand set of options, but in the left-hand set of options, it'll cost 2 energy. So you could, in theory, gain 2 power cards in one turn. And so you can increase your total number of cards knowing that you're going to have to forget one each turn. So you can have more cards in your hand than the 4 that you start with, even though you're forgetting one each turn. That could also be valuable if you want to gain a major. You can also, you'll still have to forget something when you gain the major, but then by grabbing a second card, it allows you to maintain your hand size. But there is a cost to do that. As far as the other options, gain 2 energy is pretty standard. It's really probably going to be the least used option, because once the fear starts getting earned, you'll have more than enough energy. You won't know what to do with it. So it's really, you might want it for the first turn or something because you start with 0, or if you get into a tough spot. The last option, when I originally built this, it was on the presence tracks, but it's a little too powerful there. And I thought it was interesting because you're cycling your cards so much. This gives you an opportunity to get more use out of it, but you do have to pay for it twice in the growth phase. This is before you've earned any energy from presence. And should you lose that card to something like an event where it's aided by a certain element and you have to forget that card, you've already paid for it twice. Like, you're not getting your money back. So it hurts twice as much when you do that. It's a little bit of a gamble. but I thought it was an interesting option that I haven't seen elsewhere. So that's growth. I think pretty often the growth options are going to be, you're going to take the first presence, and then from the second set, you're going to take one card. And that'll probably be pretty standard, but it's nice to have the ability to get another card or to put two presents down at a time, just situationally. And then that final play a card twice by paying twice now option can really help you close the game out. It's super powerful, but it's definitely at the expense of something else. Okay, so let's move down to the presence tracks. And as I mentioned earlier, you start with 0 energy, but you also start with 2 card plays. So that's super unusual. In fact, I don't think there's another spirit that has that exact combination. So you start with, if we look at the top track, 0 energy per turn, and you can immediately get that up to 1. And then you start hitting elements across the top. So 1 sun, and then 1 moon, and then 1 fire and air, and finally a 2 energy. So from presence tracks alone, a super energy starved spirit, and you're really going to be relying on generating fear for your energy needs. On the bottom track, you start with 2 card plays, and then maintain that for the first option. So a little bit slow, but you can get. You can see it's pretty straightforward: 2, 3, and then a sun element, and then 4, 5, 6. So you can get your card plays up pretty high. The thinking being that if you go that route, once you've cleared that bottom track, you can start using your growth options to gain 2 power cards per turn and increasing your hand size. And then you're just throwing out a ton of cards every turn, which can also be beneficial with your innates as well. So we'll take a look at those next. But I think what the spirit allows for is you can go for the high number of minor power cards every turn, and try and hit those innates frequently, or you could go for a major. You'll have the energy for it, and you just want to get one that you can threshold, and you want to try and get in it's not really a reclaim cycle because you don't have to reclaim, but you can try and play that major every round. And if you can keep thresholding it every round, that could be, super powerful if you can make it work. So let's take a look at the innate powers. There are 2, which is pretty typical. They're both fast, both range 0. But you'll notice they both have the same first level, which is 1 sun, and they both read, this power has +1 range per sun you have. And so what I played with here is, elementally, this is a spirit that's moon, fire, and air, which I think works for thematically for what it is. But these ghosts are not purely, frightening or even malicious. They are towards the invaders, but they're actively benevolent towards the Dahan as well, and I don't want that to be ignored. So I threw the sun element in as well, and that's like I said, that's what can add range, which is super helpful for both of these, being at 0. So the innate on the left is called Scared to Death, and it targets a land with invaders. So by default, range 0, but you can easily get that up to 1 or 2, which is super powerful. The first level, you need 2 moon and 2 fire, and it gives you 1 fear and 2 damage. So really convenient for taking out a town, which would, then give you another fear. And don't forget, each of those fear gives you an energy. So it's pretty strong, but getting the 2 fire is going to be important. And fire is not readily available on your presence tracks. And it's a little bit tricky on your cards, as we'll see in a moment. So that's 2 moon, 2 fire. If you're able to have 3 moon, you can also do 1 fear per 2 power cards you've played this turn, rounded down. So again, you can play up to 6 cards a turn is the max, but 4 is not unreasonable. So if you can cut that in half to 2, that can be 2 more fear. at 3 moon, but a max of 3 more fear, which is a big deal because that's 3 more energy as well. And then if you have 3 fire, it's 1 damage per 2 power cards you've played. So this innate really benefits from playing a high number of cards. The more cards you can play when you hit those bottom 2 thresholds, the more you're going to get out of it. For a maximum, I guess, of I don't know. It does a lot. Let's look at the innate on the right. It's the dead have long memories, and this one is a little unusual. But the thought behind it is that the spirit wants the Dahan to live, but sometimes that's not always possible, and you can't affect that 100% of the time. So if you know Dahan are going to be lost, thematically, those Dahan that are killed by the invaders join this spirit as these ghosts of 1,000 generations. So they don't really go away. They go away in the form of Dahan, but they stick around in the form of the spirit. And so you have to target a land with Dahan. And the first tier is 1 moon, 1 air, and it's 1 fear per Dahan destroyed in target land this turn. So if you know you're going to lose Dahan, or even if you're able to threshold it and everything looks okay, target some Dahan anyway, just in case. And if something happens to those Dahan, the invaders will, know that they're coming back as ghosts, and they'll be fearful of that. The second tier is 2 moon, 2 air, and it says, instead, if any Dahan are destroyed in target land this turn, add 1 presence, limited to once per turn, and you add that presence after adding blight if that applies. So it's super nice if you can't defend a land that has both Dahan and your presence. If it ravages, for example, and blights, you lose your presence from the blight, and then you lose the Dahan, but then you add your presence right back to that land, and then that destroyed presence isn't holding you back from clearing your tracks from your special rule Eternal Essence. The bottom tier of this one is 4 moon and 3 air. Not necessarily easy to hit, but if you can, it's instead do both. So in the target land, if Dahan are destroyed, it's 1 fear per destroyed Dahan and add a presence. And if you don't have any destroyed presence, maybe you're not in that land, because this power can have some range if you've got sun element, then you get to add a presence from your track, which is you can't overstate how helpful that is. So let's set that aside for a minute and take a look at these cards. So there's 4 unique power cards, which is pretty typical. And the first one here is called Omens from Ancestors. The cost is 1 energy. It's a fast power, and you target yourself. The elements are 1 sun and 1 air. And it reads, defend 2 in each land with your presence and Dahan. So the idea here is that the invaders are coming to do something, and the ghosts are able to see this and let the Dahan know. So anywhere where you have presence and Dahan, they're prepared and they defend 2. Super useful for, if there's a town and an explorer doing 3 damage. If there's a Dahan there and a presence, you defend it. The Dahan takes 1 damage and then fights back and takes out the town, which will then generate fear and you gain energy. So you can make really good use of that if the cards come up, or if the invader actions are coming up in your favor. And again, for 1 energy, being able to defend 2 in multiple lands is really helpful if you're able to swing it. The second card is Possession Accelerates Horror. I really like the way the picture came out on this one. That's one scary dude. So this one costs 2 energy. It's a slow power at range 1, target any land. The elements are moon and fire. So this pairs well with the first innate. And it reads, push all explorers and towns to as many different lands as possible. each moved invader deals damage to other invaders, not to each invader, but to other invaders in the land they are moved to. So if you've got one land that's really built up, which is frequently what happens. I mean, generally that's what I try and do. I'd rather have everybody in one spot than a lot of spots. But if you've got a land that's really built up, this will push everybody out. So it can be useful because it's slow. It can be useful after a build. If you're not able to prevent a build, so there's an explorer and then they build a town, you can use this. It'll push both the explorer and the town out. They need to go to different lands whenever possible. But then that town and that explorer, when they arrive in the other lands, they're going to do damage to whoever's there, which is super strong. And I think it goes with the theme of the card. It's the idea is it's possession. You've possessed these invaders to go out and injure other invaders out in the world. So I think that could be really strong, but it's, believe it or not, stronger when paired with another one of these cards, which we'll get to in a minute. But let's look at the third one. The third one is Harbingers of Ruin. This is a 0-cost card, and the only one for the spirit. Generally, the spirit has more expensive starting cards, but because it starts with 0 energy on its presence track, by default, it does have one card it can play, and it's this one. So it's 0 cost or 0 energy. It's a slow power at range 1. Target land is any, and the elements are a moon and an earth. And the earth is not used for anything specifically with the spirit, but it could always help you threshold something else. The text reads, 1 fear for each town or city in target land, maximum 5. So thematically the idea is, because it's range 1, there's towns or cities, and the ghosts are sort of just over the horizon in the next land over, and their effects are being felt, and the people know that the ghosts are coming. So that's what's generating the fear. From a practical perspective, because it's a 0-cost card, and because fear gives you energy, this is a way to generate more energy in addition to the fear. And it's maxed out at 5 because typically it's 4 fear markers per player, but there's 1 more in the pool for the spirit. So this kind of, if you're trying to generate 1 fear card, earn 1 fear card per round, the spirit's obligation can be met with this card if there's a land that happens to be built up that much. So the last card is called Follow the Psychopomps. And I'm not going to assume everybody knows what a psychopomp is, but it's a word for like a guide, a guide that transitions people from the world of the living to the dead. So one familiar example might be the Grim Reaper is a psychopomp, but there are, as you can imagine, lots of examples of that from cultures all over the world and from all sorts of different time periods. So those collectively are called psychopomps, but that's the idea. And so this card costs 3 energy, which is fairly pricey. It's fast, and range is 0 from a sacred site, so fairly limited, though target land is any. And the elements are moon, fire, and air, which will help you with either of the innates, both of the innates, I guess. There is a threshold at the bottom that says if you have 2 suns, this power has +2 range. So +2 from a sacred site is a lot more versatile, and having 2 suns is not impossible, since there are 2 on the presence tracks, 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom, and then 1 on your starting cards. Omens from Ancestors has sun, so definitely doable. The effect of this card is, when any invader would be added, replaced, moved into or moved out of the target land, instead immediately destroy them. So this is an obvious case is if a land is going to build, instead of adding invaders to that land, you would just destroy them. And if they're going to build a town, say you destroy the town when it's built, and you get the fear for that as well. This overrides any event cards or other effects that say +1 health for towns and cities or anything like that, because it explicitly just says to destroy them. So it's regardless of their health. So if you were to pair this, I'll put them next to each other here. If you paired Follow the Psychopomps with Possession Accelerates Horror, you could target a land with a lot of explorers and towns. And then when the slow phase comes around and Possession Accelerates Horror is used, you push all those explorers and towns out. And because they're moving out of the target land, they're immediately destroyed. So you can do tons of damage this way and get a lot of plastic off the board. So fairly strong, but fairly expensive too. It's a little bit situational maybe. So anyway, these are the starting cards for this spirit, the unique power cards. I'm going to set these aside, go back to the spirit panel, flip it over to the lore side. I really like the way this picture turned out too, with the cloud, with the skull, this in the shape of a skull looming over the island. I think that's pretty cool. And I think the look of it feels very Spirit Island, so pleased with that. But now that we've kind of gone over everything that there is for the spirit, let's look at the play style. So this reads, changes fundamental elements of gameplay, including forgetting, reclaiming, presence placement, and energy generation. Fortunately, these changes don't specifically impact teammates to a significant degree. An abundance of energy will be tempered by card loss. High card cycling interferes with long-term thinking, but also promotes great flexibility. Can be an absolute juggernaut when paired with fear-generating spirits like Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares or Many Minds Move as One. And so that's how I expect this spirit to play out, and that's been my experience play testing it. The handful of times I've used it myself and with my play group. So hopefully you like the spirit. Hopefully you think it's interesting. I certainly do. And if you'd like, of course, I probably should have plugged this in the beginning. If you're interested in this spirit and using it yourself, you can print and play both this spirit and the others in my Radical Adaptations set, at least that have been released so far, from my website. That is tablefor1.games, and you can go to the free content section to find the PDFs for this. They're 8.5 by 11, and you just print it double-sided, and it'll give you the spirit panel as well as the cards. So give it a shot. Let me know what you think. And I'm going to go ahead now and do a solo playthrough myself. So that's going to be posted at the same time as this video, so you can hop on over there and check it out. And wish me luck, but I'm looking forward to it, and I hope it goes well. So thanks for watching. And in 2 more weeks, at least from this release date, I will post the 4th spirit in the Radical Adaptations series, so you can look forward to that as well. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next video.